Welcome to the Operatory podcast, the podcast about burying the dinosaurs in dentistry, moving past outdated technology and procedures to find a better way. With me, as always, is my man, David Pryor, providing, of course, the patient's perspective. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, Bryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. However, typically speaking, you are trying to make me laugh at the beginning of this podcast, as we talk about. Today, however,
yes,
I did it for you. Yes.
Yes. Well, it's been a long time since we've been in the studio.
And I'm rusty. In fact, the reason was I called it the Auditory podcast, not the Operatory. So it's been a long morning and part of a long year. You have a cycle of mess that we've been all been going through during the year 2020. That is the dumpster fire of the year.
I'm sure that every single one of these listeners can relate to your dilemmas.
If you went into your office and said welcome and you had the wrong name to your office, that's what I just did. That's what happens after 9 months of 2020.
Yes.
And you know what's happened in 2020 other than the whole mess of what's been going on everywhere, messes, I should say. But we've kind of come through, hopefully, or on the tail end of this pandemic right now. Now, I don't know how long this is going to go on, but I do know that there's been several sort of fires that have come up in dentistry across the industry. It started off when we were shut down. Our practices were actually turned off. Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a problem. Then we were back on, and there's this sort of like, are people going to come in? And turned out that, it was a complete shocker to me, there was massive demand by patients,
yep.
Right? So the people that you represent here, turns out they actually like getting their teeth cleaned. They like coming to the office. So we had massive patient demand, which was a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
What then happened at my office, and I can tell you from talking with many dentists across this wonderful country, and also reading on social media where I'm in a lot of the dental groups, and the volume, what really sparked this podcast topic to me was somebody said something about being understaffed, and then the litany of comments that came after that. It seems like this is not a regional thing. This is across the industry. It feels like we are understaffed. It's really, really hard now to attract and retain qualified team members. And it's not, like I said, it's not regional. It's not even based on position. There's a massive shaking of people throughout the industry. And and that's, I'm seeing it at the DSO, Dental Care Alliance, that I work with, but not anymore, probably less than the average offices. And because if you are a large organization, it's easier to deal with these people changes than it is if if you've had the same team members for the last decade and then your team gets shaken up, it really, really hurts. And I want to acknowledge something that, I think you'll agree with me, Dave, is that at the beginning of this pandemic, there was new issue every single week. This one isn't going away anytime soon.
I agree. I certainly what I'm seeing is that practices are being pushed into rethinking how they do things in a big, big way.
Yeah, and
because of the limited staffing.
Yeah, and even if you were fully staffed, let's say you had no changes in your team members, right? Those team members have new things to do.
Yep.
Right. We have somebody out front before, we have an entryway. Luckily we have the whole building now, and so we can actually have somebody where we set up a desk. So as you enter the building, there's somebody there taking temperatures, making sure everybody's wearing a mask, right? Giving people hand sanitizer, and then there's the plexiglass when you come up to the front desk, so we can't see as many people. So our systems have been gummed up. Even if you were your team was totally not only fully staffed, but then you have new procedures you have to do, which slows you down. And frankly, it's not like pre-COVID, we weren't busy, right?
Yeah.
And what the sort of the tough love that I want to tell the audience is that this is not going to shift this is not like some of the other changes that have happened in COVID that might be rewound. I think we're in for the long haul where team members are going to be difficult to find, retain in the profession, and then there's going to be much more overhead, right? And we're going to have new things that we need to do to adjust to the new reality that's going to put extra burden on our team members.
Yes.
Right. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, that's the bad thing. That's the challenge we have. Practicing dentistry pre-COVID was hard. It's now become a hell of a lot harder.
Right.
Right. And we have less people to help us in this challenge. And those people have to do more things. Right.
Yep.
And so there is two big things that I think dentists need to do. Number one is look to see how you can cut your overhead, right? Because there's other areas where no matter what you do, that overhead's gone up. PPE, up, right? Somebody's got to pay for thermometers and the plexiglass and the UV sterilization stuff and the misting or whatever you're doing in your practice, the new suction protocols, is doing more isolate, whatever you're doing to mitigate this is not going away soon. So we have to look for other ways to cut overhead. And that can come across the board from, the biggest way is with team members. So because that's our biggest wage. And so that leads into the sort of the second thing, which is automate as much as you can. Streamline, cut your overhead, and automate. And I was thinking about it, and you look at, like, if you go to Target, if you go to Starbucks, they do a really good job of this. If you look at a Starbucks today, it's very different than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. They're leveraging technology where you walk in, and as much that can be done by automation and technology is. And if you look at sort of the silver lining to this rainbow is that there's lots of places in the average dental practice to cut overhead, streamline, lean in technology, and automate things, right?
Well, certainly, I mean, that's my day, right, is talking about the different ways technology can create greater efficiencies within your practice. Whenever I'm talking about Opera DDS stuff specifically, I'm always talking about the two different things that we really focus on whenever we develop anything. Number one is really to improve the patient experience, but number two is always to streamline things. And there's no, I don't really necessarily put those in any order, but those are always the reasons that we develop things the way we develop them, and that's the entirety of my conversation when talking about the different products that we offer. So it's
yeah. And if you listen to Richard Branson, he says if you take care of your people take care of your customers, right? So, or if you take care of your employees, they take care of your customers. And so the patient experience, I think, is that's something we talk about on this podcast a lot, very near and dear to my heart. I think it's the core of any dental practice. But I think what's sort of the burning hot topic that's going to not be going away, sort of the foundational effort that I think dentists should be looking at right now, because I think a lot of people are hurting, and they're probably listening. They're going, "Yep, my team's going through the same thing. Either those people that I thought would never leave have just left, or I've got these open positions and it's really hard to find the right person for, or they're thinking, got my team, but holy crap, they're doing a hell of a lot more than they were 6 months ago, right? What I would say is right now is the time to look at easy technology to implement things like paperless forms. We've talked about a lot. Paperless forms, automating your recall system as much as possible, reviews, whatever you can do, social media. We've had Lou from Evergreen talk about that on this podcast. If you haven't listened to the other podcasts, go back and look. We talk a lot about this stuff on previous podcasts. Paperless forms is probably, because it's one of the things. I did a webinar with Dr. Stephen Katz, and he pointed out something to me that I embarrassingly hadn't realized. As we were talking about paperless forms, he said, Bryan, this isn't a once a month thing. This isn't a once a day thing. This is a every patient, every single time, multiple times thing. Right now we have to do pre-screening forms, right? That's one touch point. for everybody every time.
Yep.
In Minnesota, every time you have to have consent. Yep. So that's another touch point. That's 2 touch points every patient, every single time that if you're having your team do that, right?
Yep.
It was not the best way to do it. But when we're understaffed and our staff are overwhelmed, it is brutally painful to do to your team.
Well, the common language that I use when specifically talking about paperless forms, when I'm in a demo with somebody is this, before dental practice is still, most of them are still using paper forms. And, before COVID, it was a nice to have electronic forms. It improved efficiency. It made things better for the front end staff. But now it's a must have. Mm-hmm. I don't know how a practice can really operate and do all the transcription, scanning, shredding that they'd have to do without just making it automated. So the front desk before COVID was overwhelmed, but now it's just ridiculous. And so the people that I'm talking to are like, I have to get this like yesterday. It isn't a nice to have. It is I must have this, and I must have this yesterday.
Yeah, because people are hurting right now, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, I appreciate that. You couldn't agree more. And I think so. We really are, want to do what we can to help with this. And so, like you said, we do this with Opera DDS. And so I've got really three suggestions for people that are listening to this podcast. If they're understaffed or their team are overwhelmed, 3 things to do. Number 1 is go to operadds.com/go. Right, we've got demos there, and if you put in the promo code DEMO DEMO 30, right now we're doing no setup fee, no charges for 30 days. You can use the system, turn it off on day 29, and there's no fees. Right, so you can, if you think that this is not a vital part of your practice, which like nobody does, you can turn it off. It's only, and then after that, it's less than $100 a month. So go to operadds.com/go. We've got an overview of the whole system that you can watch, but if you put in demo 30 as the promo code, you can try out whatever you want to for free. And the one that really gets started going on is paperless forms. Everybody needs it now.
Yep.
Number 2 is go to upgradedental.com, because we have some great free resources for your team, including a course on the paperless practice. So Abby Fry, that we've had on the podcast, does a great job explaining to team members the importance, the value to them to implement paperless forms. And then the value to the patients too. It's massively convenient for everybody. So even if if you have trouble with your team at upgradedental.com, we've got the free paperless course training for you too. So go there. And the third thing is listen to more podcasts that we've gone over, because we talk about this stuff a lot, right? And I can't tell you what we're not talking about that we've talked about in the last 100 of episodes that you and I have yammered on about the value of burying these dinosaurs in dentistry, right? It kind of hurts me, because like we talk to people all the time that should have implemented this prior to COVID. Mm-hmm. And now when their team members are overwhelmed, and you have to start doing things a different way because we're being forced to, where you're having to take temperatures and there's so many other things to do. This might seem like another thing to do, but this is what frees you up to do those other things.
Yeah. One of the things, when talking about Abby and the message that she delivers that I think is really cool is that she's had so much experience, and she's a second voice of somebody that's worked in a dental practice that has leading edge technology all the time. So having somebody, say exactly the same things that you're saying from a different perspective makes it a really impactful experience watching what she has to say.
Well, yeah, because she's a normal functioning human being who's wildly intelligent, unlike me, who's just crazy and like doing tons of stuff.
Exactly.
Right? That's so I appreciate you for saying it that way. Because Abby is like a total rock star assistant who just is completely like hyper focused on what's doing right for patients.
Yep.
Elevating care as much as possible. And so her perspective is truly authentic, that she really does understand the viewpoint of team members and presents it that way. You're exactly right.
And she humanizes it. You and I get wound up in the technology, but Abby really brings it down to where it's really going to help you and make you feel better and have a better practice.
Yeah, which is what team members, that's the perspective, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
for all of us, but I think as dentists, we're focused on doing high quality clinical care. It's more about you're right, it's more about the teeth, not what's 6 inches above the teeth or a foot below in the heart or space, right? Yeah, you're right. So you're exactly right. Well, thank you, Dave. As always, your perspective is hugely valued on the Operatory. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Have a great one.
You too.